Morning all. I hope you can listen to me well. Thank you very much for attending my talk. I'm going to talk about why, in our opinion, the traditional pen testing is dead. First of all, I would just like to say about myself. So I've got Indian roots. I live in Portugal, Lisbon. I've got more than 20 years of experience in information security. I hold a master's from Royal Holloway University of London and a few certifications as well. I'm proud of being a father of two beautiful kids. I work with a top InfoSec team in Portugal. I'm proud of the concept of KEEP-IT-SECURE-24 and having lost more than over 100 pounds in the last 12 months without any surgeries or whatever. Okay, so let's go straight to the point. So pen testing has been around for many, many years. In reality, in technology, we invest in security, we invest in technology, in processes, and in people. And those are the typical three security controls in which we invest. But the most practical way to understand how well these controls are working together is, in fact, to test them. Because if you don't test, you can't measure the return on investment on those controls. So typically, that's what pen test is about, is the practical approach to test it on a preventive manner. Now, I would like to state that the internet has been evolving a lot in the latest years. Everyone knows that the internet has changed a lot since it came, since the 90s. In fact, when I started to do pen testing, the web looked like that. So it was much different, and pen testing was much more focused on infrastructure. Nowadays, we've got complex environments to test. We've got complex interactions between applications. We've got mobile is undoubtedly a variable that we have to take into account. So in fact, internet has changed a lot in terms of how it looked like and nowadays how it looks. And for security, there is a big impact, as you can imagine. But pen testing has also changed a lot because in the last 10 years, loads of methodologies and certifications came through the market that were not there. And also in terms of frameworks and tools. Eventually just 2 or 3 tools of those ones were around in the 90s. Everything else is new. So new techniques, new methodologies, and new tools also arise in the market for pen testing. So that makes sense because the internet and associated services have evolved a lot. The methodologies of the attackers has also evolved a lot because we rely every time more and more in technology so that our business is more effective and efficient. Everyone knows that. And as we saw, the tools and methodology for pen testing has also progressed. So looks like everything is aligned, right? Well, what about the typical pen testing process? Well, in the 90s, usually when you wanted to test your security, what you would do is you hire a company, they would test, they would confirm the results because pen testing is not scanning, so they don't deliver false positives, of course. So they test, they confirm, they provide a nice report, and the entity corrects. So this was the process in the 90s. Guess what? Nowadays, it's pretty much the same, isn't it? So the internet has evolved, the tools have evolved, the methodologies have evolved, but the process remains the same. Because of this, we believe that the current momentum is very challenging for the traditional pen testing model and resulting on a very inefficient and ineffective model. And I'll go further, I'll go deeper, I'll explain why. First of all, in the 90s, the number of vulnerabilities that were arising every month, every day, were so low that it was almost irrelevant to test it on a continuous basis. But nowadays, with the number of vulnerabilities arising and the number of threats arising, it doesn't really make sense to test it as a one-off. It's almost the same thing as calling a civil engineer, asking him to test the resilience of this building, and as soon as he's leaving, we are bricking walls, isn't it? So it doesn't really make sense. In fact, when we used to do traditional pen testing, and we still do if our client really wants to, one of the hardest decisions was when to start the pen test. Because they would say, oh, next week I'm changing this, the week after I'm changing this, the week after I'm upgrading this. There is never a good time to do a pen test, is it? Because organizations are always changing, they're always dynamic. So looking at the traditional process, what happens when you change something just after the test ends. Well, you can say, well, I'll get it tested on the next cycle. Well, it's true, but this cycle represents a lot of risk because you just put something into production that hasn't been tested. Why do we test functionally all our applications, but we don't test it on security-wise? So another problem, another typical problem of the typical pen test approach is that it's a time-limited approach in the sense that whoever buys pen testing usually is buying a certain number of man-days of testing. So what's the problem with that approach? The problem is that approach that if we look at this perspective, nowadays we can say that you've got hackers that are script kiddies, so they spend very few time per potential victim and its potential damage is low. Then we've got opportunistic attackers. These attackers are attackers that know certain vulnerabilities in certain systems, in certain applications. And these two profiles, they can be covered with standard pen testing. Why? Because there is a set of tests that we know that we need to do, and eventually we might be able to do it within that time frame. But what about the third profile? What about the advanced persistent attackers? Those guys are willing to do reverse engineering of the traffic. They want to reverse engineer the protocols. They want to look at the cookies. They want to try to decrypt the cookies. They want to try to understand what's inside. They want to try to understand the business logic of your application. They want to try to subvert it. And that's not possible in 5 or 10 or 15 man days. So if you are concerned about advanced persistent attackers, you would really need persistent testing because it allows you to go much, much deeper in the testing process. Okay, another issue about the traditional pen testing process is the correction follow-up. In the sense that, okay, so we test, we confirm, we report, the entity corrects. Are you sure that when it corrects, it's adequately mitigated? We've got a statistic. We've been providing this service for a few years to many customers. And we've got a statistics. I would like your help to try to guess what's the percentage of time when our clients tell us the vulnerability has been corrected, and at the first attempt, when we retest, it hasn't been corrected. Who can give me a figure? 85 more? 90, okay. So it's 60%. So you're not far. 60% of the times, the vulnerabilities at the first attempt are not adequately mitigated. So on the traditional pen test model, usually there is no retesting, because at the beginning it's a one-off project. We really don't know how many vulnerabilities we are going to report, how much time it will take to retest. So it's out of the scope. So that's one of the biggest issues on the traditional pen testing model. And last but not least, the management of the process and the results itself. So in the traditional process, what happens is you get a very nice, well-written report. You should also get a good presentation. The lead pen tester should come over your office. They should present the results. They should discuss with you. Everything fine, then they leave. Then you've got a report, a static report in your hand, eventually a PDF file, encrypted, I hope. And what are you going to do with it? Imagine that you've got several critical vulnerabilities. So are you going to copy-paste to email and email everyone? Are you going to insert it with using copy-paste in your ticketing system? That's critical data mixed with other kind of data. How are you going to track the status? Are you going to build an Excel file, call every entity, every internal team every week to track status of how things are going? How are you going to extract metrics about the process? Do you know which ones are the vendors that introduce more critical vulnerabilities? Do you know what kind of vulnerabilities are more typical and which teams need to be trained on that specific area? You know the mean average resolution time for critical vulnerabilities per team? You don't, because usually pen testing is not a process. Pen testing is usually approached as a project. But security is not a project, is it? Security is a process. So why you can't extract metrics from the traditional method? Because it's not a process. And you can't manage something that is just a one-off approach. You can't extract the metrics. So these are some of the reasons for which we think that the traditional pen testing model isn't effective anymore. And given all the facts, we understand that the actual model is not, in fact, balanced in terms of cost-benefit. So you don't get what you pay for. Why? Because it's a one-off approach. Does it integrate with your change management? The testing is shallow, is not deep. It's hard to manage. The resolution can be inefficient and doesn't provide you the metrics that you really need. So we don't think that the industry wants to continue to approach pen testing as a one-off approach. It shouldn't be, and I think it's pretty obvious. So what we did was we came up with KEEP-IT-SECURE-24. And in KEEP-IT-SECURE-24, what we deliver is we deliver penetration testing on a managed service format. So we understand what the scope of the client is, what is the estimated effort in terms of pen testing, and we engaged on a contract with the client, and we provide persistent and deep pen testing. Another thing that we did was we created a management platform, and on this management platform, what we do is we provide all the deliverables on this management platform. So our clients can manage the life cycle of vulnerabilities, create users, assign it to other people, extract dynamic reporting, all in a platform instead of delivering static reporting. So compared with the traditional process, what we do is we do continued and regular pen testing. We do it deep. The scope is dynamic. You can integrate with your change management. So whenever you change something that you think that it requires testing, we will test it. We provide retesting after correction to make sure that vulnerabilities are adequately mitigated. We give support during the process of resolution, correction, and we will make available our management platform. This is done by a fully certified team. We are also CREST member company as well. We are ISO 27001 certified company. And I would just like to finish and show a bit of the platform, so what it does. So it gives you access to a dashboard where you've got access to metrics such as how many vulnerabilities are critical to be solved. You can see some graphics. You can see your risk level. You can see your top high-risk vulnerabilities on the system. Then you can list all the vulnerabilities, and then you can see the details of each vulnerability itself. This is not scanning, so this is documented by people. So you've got all the details and the proof of concept of the vulnerability inside each vulnerability. Then you've got detailed recommendations of how you can mitigate those vulnerabilities. Then you can use this as a ticketing system. You can even integrate with your ticketing system. So you can create multiple users. You can assign the vulnerabilities to them. You can put comments. You can put questions to us. So it's dynamic. You can extract reports. You can just select the variables, select the assets, group them. You can extract dynamic reporting on the fly, HTML or PDF file. So you can just download. Then there is an assets module. On the assets module, what you do is you represent your assets. And whenever you need a specific test, you just need to drag and drop that box and tell us that you want a specific test. So besides the persistent testing that we are always doing, there is an easy way to let us know that something is changed and you want to test. Or we can also integrate this with the ITIL framework where you manage your change management process. And then there are some settings where you can tweak the risk algorithm. You can create new users. This is a summary of our platform. So to finish, I would like just to conclude by saying that usually the traditional approach looks like that. So usually what happens is someone tests, then reports, then eventually you guys correct, and on time, some tests will occur again. What we think that pen testing should look like is like this. So testing, reporting, correcting, validating with integrating with change management on a managed service approach as a process, where you can, in fact, manage your KPIs, where you can enforce resolution times, where you can monitor the status, where you can extract dynamic reporting, establish testing priorities. You can even test advanced scenarios because we can together build scenarios that are that involve also phishing, social engineering. So it depends. We can simulate that you have had a flaw, for example, on your web server to check the resilience of the rest of the controls. So it's something that we could work out together. So this is it. So KEEP-IT-SECURE-24 is approaching pen testing on a managed service approach. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed.